everybody, and thank you for coming out. I hope you're having a great time tonight. Dee Jackson Brown, president of the Park County Historical Society, was born in Connecticut. Her family has been in this country since the 1600s. For 8 years, Dee has taught Colorado fur trade history to many school groups that do field trips to the Ford Restaurant in Morrison, Colorado. She brought that history to life by dressing several students from each class in clothing representing different cultures and persons who actually lived at the Bent's Fort during the 1830s. She has also displayed American Indian beaded items and talked about the various cultures at American Indian powwows, the Spanish colonial art market, and the 1830s rendezvous. Please welcome Dee Jackson Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see you here tonight. My subject is the fur trade. You're probably wondering, what is the fur trade and what am I talking about? I'm talking about fur-bearing animals. Any animal that had a fur coat. A bear, a moose, a deer, a mink, a beaver, a marten, all these fur-bearing animals. Why the fur trade? Because the fur trade is the first commercial enterprise that actually built and paid for this country. And in order to understand what happened, I'm going to take you back on a journey. And this is a really, really condensed version of a really big subject. This is an overall picture, just to give you an idea of why there was a Colorado, why there was South Park. But we have to go back to Europe in the 1500s. And back in Europe in the 1500s, particularly France and the United Kingdom, people wore fur coats, fur capes to keep warm. So they needed all these fur-bearing animals. Over the time, these fur-bearing animals were being hunted out. They needed more. So back in the 1500s, the French in particular sent out some explorers across the Atlantic to what is now Canada. These names may ring a bell with you. Samuel de Champlain, Pierre Radisson, Antoine Brulé, whom the Sioux take their name from. Brulé, they call themselves Brule. These are 3 examples of French explorers that came across to Canada. Now, when they came here, they had ships, big ships. They could sail into bays and they could sail up the rivers, but they couldn't get any farther than that. They couldn't get further down streams and creeks. And they were here to explore because they really didn't know what was over here. And of course, when they got here, they found out this was a supermarket of fur-bearing animals. Everything that they needed. So then, they had to bring along voyageurs. These are French mountain men, French trappers. They called them voyageurs because they would paddle in their canoes up the rivers to get further inland. The rivers were the highways back then. And the rivers remained the highways for quite a few years. They didn't know of any trails. They only learned of those when they started trading with the Hurons, okay? But at first, their voyageurs would paddle their canoes up the rivers to find these furs, okay? Now, when they found these furs and go hunting, and they were trading with the Hurons, they started piling up all these furs that they had. They could bring them to the canoe and take them back to the big ship. But then they realized as they were trading and collecting all these furs and they were getting more and more, they had to have a place to put these furs. So that's why they started building trading posts. They were called fur trading posts. And they started putting these up along the rivers all up through Canada. Because that's where the boats come and the canoes. Now, while this is going on in the 1500s, We come up to the early 1600s, and we have a man, Captain Chauvin, who actually became the leader and the controller of the fur trade for the French. Now, of course, England decided, oh, we got to get into this too. We need this fur. This is becoming a very lucrative business. So they sent some ships over here, Jamestown, Plymouth Colony. Now, in order to pay for this, the Virginia Land Company had to finance these trips. The only way they could pay for this was to go out and hunt furs and send them back. This was also the only way that people that settled Jamestown and the Plymouth Colony could get any goods. There was nothing here except what they brought with themselves. So in order to get goods from England coming back, they had to send furs back so they could make money and then buy goods that they need. So there was this trade started going. Now, at the same time, we had the Spanish down in Florida. I'm saying this is a really easy synopsis. Spanish down in Florida, okay? So we've got the Spanish, the English, Scotch-Irish, and we have the French and Scotch-Irish up here in Canada. We're all hunting furs. They're coming, the English are coming west, hunting furs. Spanish are down the south. French are in Canada, heading south. Well, the first and foremost trading post that you might have heard of is Fort Duquesne. This was built at a very strategic place along the confluence of three rivers, the Monongahela, the Ohio, and the Allegheny. Terrific place. This is where Pittsburgh today is located. And this is why Pittsburgh grew up there. This was the place to trade at these three rivers. In the meantime, the English are coming further into the country, and they have a lot of fur trade posts that they're also establishing. So the French, the English, and the Spanish down here. They're all coming west. Because as they start hunting these furs, they tramp them out and start coming to the west, to the Mississippi. Now, there was a Frenchman up here, Pierre Leclerc, and he was coming south because he wanted to establish a fur trade post somewhere along this mighty Mississippi. Because you have the Ohio that comes into the Mississippi, so Fort Duquesne would have this wonderful trade going up and down the Mississippi, both north and south through the entire country. At that time was the edge of the United States. So Pierre Leclerc was coming down the Mississippi, and he's looking for a place that has a high bluff. Because he knew that if you put it down low in the Mississippi is going to flood out every so often. So he's smart enough to look for a bluff, a place to put a fur trade post. And he found one, just below another great river highway called the Missouri River. He put this first trade post in the 1700s called St. Louis. He named this post in honor of King Louis IX of France. Now there were 5 French families that founded St. Louis. And out of 5, 2 of them were highly involved with the fur trade. In the meantime, we had the English settlers come to the Mississippi, and we still have the Spanish down here, Florida and New Orleans. Okay? So they're coming up to the Mississippi here, and I need to explain this to you a little bit. This is Colorado. Okay? This is Colorado, this is Denver, Trinidad, Grand Junction, Steamboat Springs, French Louisiana, Spain, the United States disputed Spain, Spanish territory. Mexico claims this also, and eventually Texas claims all the way up to here. Grand Jefferson was the president at the time, he bought that Louisiana Purchase from Napoleon. That expanded the United States of America to double the size that it was. Okay? Pat, if you want to go to the next one, appreciate it. Now, these fur traders were coming out. That's the Mississippi. Louisiana Purchase. Fur traders were out here for the most valuable fur ever, and that's a beaver. This is called a plume. That's another French word. Plume means plus in France. So a lot of men or trappers, they actually did about the same thing. They were looking for the biggest beaver, for the thickest fur, because that brought them the most money that they could get. So plume means plus. And if you ever see Hudson's Bay blankets with stripes and down above the stripes there's 3 or 4 very small stripes, that will tell you how many beaver it took to trade for that Hudson's Bay blanket. They're there today. So this is what the trappers were coming for. Now, many of them were trappers and many of them wanted to get into the fur trade. There are several men who are down there in St. Louis. We have Pierre Chateau. We have Saron St. Vrain. Oh, that name rings a bell with you? St. Vrain in Colorado. St. Vrain School. St. Vrain Creek. St. Vrain Canyon, which is north of us. It's named for Saron St. Vrain. We have these 2 people in St. Louis coming out here. Because you see, Thomas Jefferson had sent out a couple explorers a few years earlier to find out what he had bought. Because he bought this land, but he didn't know it was out here. So, of course, he sent Lewis and Clark out here to figure out what he bought. And he also wanted to know who the Indian tribes were. Who was he going to have to trade with? And were there fur-bearing animals out there? Mm-hmm. And another one called a buffalo. So we have all these fur traders and trappers in St. Louis. If you've ever been to St. Louis, you'll notice a big arch in front of the town, right along the Mississippi River, gateway to the west. And this is truly what it is. So while this is going on down here in New Orleans, a Spanish man called Manuel Lisa, who was also interested in getting into the fur trade. So of course he comes up to Mississippi to St. Louis. Because this is where everybody came to get all their supplies to head west. Okay? Now, next one. Yeah. This is, I've never used pictures before, so this is, okay, right, thank you. Okay, heading west. We have Pierre Chateau, who kind of goes from St. Louis north. He kind of goes into Wyoming. We have Saron St. Vrain coming due west to Colorado. We have Manuel Lisa going to Santa Fe. Now, if you remember the Louisiana Purchase, Santa Fe is in a foreign country. That's Spanish territory. Anything below Arkansas River and Colorado is Spanish territory. So you need to keep that in mind. Now, there's another family involved. This is called the Bent family. The Bent family was a large family, had quite a few boys. And Charles Bent also wanted to become part of this fur trade. So he teams up with Manuel Lisa, because they're going to open up the fur trade to Santa Fe. Okay? Because he wanted to do business in Santa Fe. They felt they could make quite a bit of money dealing with the Spanish. So they take off from Independence, basically. This is the Santa Fe Trail. Now you'll notice, when you come from Independence across to Kansas, Council Grove, come down here, about 3/4 of the way across Kansas, there's 2 trails. The mountain trail and the Cimarron Cutoff. The mountain trail comes into southern Colorado, near La Junta, to Trinidad, over the Raton Pass, down to Santa Fe. The Cimarron Cutoff goes a straight route down to Cimarron, New Mexico, and around the ends of the Rocky Mountains to Santa Fe. So you would have thought that most traders and eventually settlers would have taken the Cimarron Cutoff. It's flat. It's easy. You don't have to come down through Colorado and haul your wagons over the Rocky Mountains and the Raton Pass. Well, this didn't happen. There's a couple reasons why. First of all, the Cimarron Cutoff is in Spanish territory. That's foreign country. Second of all, this is Comanche territory. And they're not so happy with you traipsing through their backyard. And there's no water. You cannot survive out here without water. The same can be said about the Smoky Hill Trail that comes in eastern Denver, Smoky Hill Boulevard, that was Smoky Hill Trail. Same thing, very, very dangerous trail because there was no water. You have to have water to survive. And you'll notice that this trail follows a great deal of the Arkansas River. Okay? So, now, where am I here? Okay. William and Charles Bent. Charles Bent teamed up with Manuel Lisa to go to Santa Fe. After several years, he split with Manuel Lisa. Manuel Lisa was doing fine. Charles teamed up with Saron St. Vrain. They were coming due west, out here to Colorado. Charles got his younger brother William involved in the fur trade with him to team up with Saron St. Vrain. They formed the Bent St. Vrain Trading Company. Now, this was their own company. Coming out here to Colorado, they were actually coming out here, they were trappers and mountain men here in the Rockies. They actually did this work. Being a trapper and a mountain man is really, really hard. This is a really dirty, nasty, hard business. It really is. And you have to be up here in these streams in Colorado, up here in South Park, in the fall, sometimes the spring. Can't do it in the wintertime because they're frozen over and the beaver hibernate. But in the fall, you get the thickest furs and the biggest beaver. So you have to physically get yourself into these really cold streams up here. You can imagine how cold this is. Really hard work. Well, the Bent brothers said, you know, we're up here working really hard doing this, and Saron St. Vrain too. So this is really like hard work. We have a lot of other mountain men up here doing the same thing. There's Jim Beckworth, there's Jim Bridger, there's Fitzpatrick, and several other very famous mountain men, which I'll get to in a minute. These guys are already out here. And you know what? There's no place to take these furs. They have their own company. If they were hired by the Rocky Mountain Fur Trade Company or the Astor Fur Trade Company, they were paid by that company, and they would take those furs back to the company and they would gotten paid. The problem is, those companies were much further north. Way far to go to. And on the other hand, the Bent brothers and Saron St. Vrain are out here. They've got a pile of all the furs, haul them into wagons. It takes 6 weeks to go back to St. Louis to sell their furs. Get whatever supplies they need, spend another 6 weeks bringing the wagons out. This became like, this is a lot of hard work. So they decided, okay, we formed our own fur trade company. We're going to open up a fur trade post, I'll say Colorado, because they do understand what I'm talking about, here in this state. We opened up the very first fur trade post in El Pueblo, Southwest Pueblo. They were there for maybe a couple of years. And this is a true story. I'm not making this up. This is a true story and it's well documented. One day, a yellow wolf from the Cheyenne Nation came down to the Bent brothers and Saron St. Bray, and he said, I have all this buffalo. What do you have to trade there? And of course, they had all these wonderful things, coffee, tea, sugar, mirrors, knives, blankets. And Yellow Wolf said, are you getting enough buffalo? And the Bent brothers said, no. We need a lot more buffalo. We have plenty of beaver coming in from all the other mountain men up here, but we need more buffalo. And the reason is because back east now, they're using the buffalo for robes and carriages. They use the beaver to make top hats. This is why beaver was the most valuable fur, even more valuable than buffalo, because of the top hats. Not only was it stylish, but this is what kept a man's head warm, and they were waterproof. If you ever pick up a beaver out of the water, his skin is dry, because underneath the fur is a felt-like fur, and it has barbs, and barbs up like this, and it keeps the water away from his skin. So they would take off all this, they would shear the beaver off, and they would get down to this fur, and they use mercury to mix this fur with, to make it stronger and more thicker, and give it some shape, and make top hats out of it. And this is where you ever heard the term mad as a hatter? This is where it comes from, because they didn't know mercury was poisonous, and they developed all these twitches and twits and all these funny things. And Alice in Wonderland and Mad Hatter, that's where this comes from. So beaver was the most important fur to get the most money for. Back that time, it was like about $3.50 per pelt, which was a lot of money. A top hat ran about $800. Today, and then the buffalo was right behind that, because the buffalo were not only used as robes in the carriages. A little later on, they would take just the hide of the buffalo, cut it into strips, send it back east and over to Europe, and they would tie these strips together, sew them together, and this is what they used in the manufacturing plants back east in Europe to make the big wheels and the gears go around in the manufacturing plants. That's what the buffalo was really used for. So now, Yellow Wolf was down at the Bent's brothers, and he said, you need more buffalo? And they said, yes, we do. And this is why. Well, Yellow Wolf said, you know what, you built your trading post in the wrong place. And this is a true story. I'm going to show you where to build your trade post over here. You put your trading post here. We as a Cheyenne Nation will put our village right next to your trading post. And we will go out and hunt all the buffalo you need. But in exchange for that, we expect first choice of your coffee, tea, sugar, knives, blankets, mirrors, and beads, and everything in your care. Well, the Bent brothers said, you know what, this is a true story. They said, you know what, this is a win-win deal. This is a good deal. So if you go to La Junta, Colorado today, to Benzel Fort, that's within 30 miles of where Yellow Wolf told them to build this fort. Yeah, next picture. Please. And the reason that Yellow Wolf said, this is where you built your fort. This is because the big herds of buffalo out there, there's buffalo herds always in the Rocky Mountains, but the biggest herds are there because the buffalo's favorite food is sunflowers, and this is where they grow. So this is a picture of Bent's Fort. This was actually done by Carrie Arnold, who was the wife of Sam Arnold, who actually owns the Fort restaurant in Morrison. But that's exactly what the fort looks like. And today, if you go down there outside of La Junta, this is what you'll see. This is the Arkansas River. The Santa Fe Trail is on this side, and you can see them coming up to the fort. Okay?
That's still there.
Oh, yes. You can go down today. Oh yes, it's completely been restored, and that's another whole story. And they have interpreters all the time. Yes. So, what happened was, William Bent ran Bent's Fort. His brother Charles went down to Santa Fe. He liked being down there on that end of the trail. They had another brother, Robert, back in Missouri, on this end of the trail. Now you can begin to see the picture. The Bent brothers control the entire trade up and down the Santa Fe Trail through the United States to Spain, Spanish territory, the Mexican territory, all of the trade. And eventually they control all of the trade from Denver north along the South Platte River, Fort Vasquez, Fort Lupton, Fort Jackson, all of them. Very shrewd businessmen. This was a very lucrative business. Okay, now, William Bent is in Bent's Fort. And true to their word, the Cheyenne put their village right next to Bent's Fort. Well, there was this very lovely Cheyenne lady. There was this very lovely Cheyenne lady named Owl Woman. Okay? Owl Woman was the daughter of Gray Thunder. Gray Thunder was the keeper of the sacred arrows of the Cheyenne Nation. He would have been like your priest or rabbi in your church today. That was his position in the Cheyenne Nation. And this very lovely daughter was there. Okay? Pat, would you go forward to the next picture? This is Saron St. Frank. Okay? And if you go to the next picture for me. William and Charles Bent. Okay, stop right there. That's okay. That's okay. William and Charles Bent. Now, as I said, William is at Bent's Fort. Charles, his brother's down in Santa Fe. Charles becomes the territorial governor of New Mexico. Okay? William's running Bent's Fort. Robert's back at the other end. Okay, the next slide, please. Okay. Owl Woman. This is a picture of Owl Woman. She is the daughter of Gray Thunder. William Bent and Owl Woman saw each other a lot. They fell in love. They got married. This is the beginning of our Colorado culture also. This is very common for mountain men to marry Indian women. And most all of them did do this. It's a win-win situation. The tribe protects the trapper. The tribe gets the goods that the trapper brings in. So this is a win-win situation. Now, these two really, truly did love each other. This was the love of his life. They had about 4 children. Their descendants today are in Colorado, and I've met many of them. One of them actually runs in the American Indian Bank down in Denver. There are quite a few out here. Okay, now, so this marriage is here. Now, next slide, please. Okay, his brother Charles is down here in Santa Fe. And he falls in love with this lovely lady called Ignatia Hungria. Okay? And as I said, he does become a territorial governor for a while. Unfortunately, he gets killed in an uprising down there because the Spanish think he is in a coup with the United States government to bring the territory of New Mexico into the United States as a state. We have never found any evidence where he was but unfortunately they thought he was. And he saw that he was killed in his coup. Okay, next one. Okay, now. Okay, here comes another very famous picture into this mix of cultures. Okay, this is a very famous individual. You probably don't recognize him in a suit and a tie and all dressed up. That's because he just came back from Washington, D.C. He's a very famous mountain man, trapper, Indian fighter. Worked for the United States Army. If you hear about his exploits, you would have thought he was 6'10". He was only as tall as I was. He was a very small individual, but very, very strong and wiry. There's a very famous Army installation south of us near Crumble, named for him, Fort Carson. This is Kit Carson. Okay, this individual is a very controversial individual, but a very interesting individual. I told you he was an Indian fighter. He had 2 Indian wives, not at the same time. But his first wife was an Arapaho lady called Singing Grass. Her name was Wanabe, and he loved her very much. They had 2 children. Unfortunately, she passed away after her second child. And so he married a Cheyenne lady. That didn't work out at all. And according to Indian tradition, all she had to do was pile her clothes outside the teepee and they were divorced. Women's lived that a long time ago. It was real easy. Real easy. So then, Kit Carson ends up down in Santa Fe. He falls in love with this lady right here, Maria Josefa Jaramillo. Same last name that Charles Beck married, Ignacia Maria Jaramillo. They married sisters. So Kit Carson became a brother-in-law of the Band Brothers. So this is a wonderful, you see how our cultures are growing here in Colorado, everything's entwined with each other. Okay? Now Kit Carson spends a lot of time sometime down at Bensport. He and Josefa didn't have any children for 7 years because Kit Carson was everywhere. He rode not once but twice on the back of a mule all the way from Bensport to California and back. This is how strong he was and enduring. After 7 years, he and Josefa had 7 children. And bless Josefa's heart, she took care of those 7 children, plus his Indian children from Wanabe, and they adopted some Navajo into their family. Now remember, he's also an Indian fighter. This is what makes it all so much fun.